Today we're going to be diving into the future of outbound and really unpacking the next evolution of what the go-to-market engine looks like in the face of AI and all the changes that it's bringing. How revenue teams operate, personalize, and scale their outbound teams. In today's video, I'm joined by Dalgleish, who is the founder and CEO of Perlon AI. Perlon's mission statement is your outbound looks like everybody else's and your buyers can tell. And Sinjin really sits at the heart of all of this. He is not only building out a AI native outbound platform, but he's scaling the go-to-market function within that company. And he scaled go-to-market teams prior to this AI revolution. So what I'm hoping to get out of this conversation is where are we? Where are we going when it comes to go-to-market teams and outbound from somebody who really sits at the heart of it? And with that introduction, let's turn to the conversation itself. Here is my interview with Sinjin Dalgleish, CEO and founder of Perlon AI. Okay, well, this is the second podcast now, and I'm really excited to have on Sinjin Dalgleish. Thank you so much for joining me today. Sinjin is the CEO and founder of Perlon AI. And I think that why I really wanted to have you on the podcast today is that I think more so than anybody, you're like in a really unique position to talk about the future of sales and go to market. Not only have you been a sales leader, somebody who's scaled out business development teams, but you're right now building out a platform that is, potentially going to be the future of outbound. And while you're doing that at the same time, you're scaling a go-to-market team. So I really think that puts you like right in the center of this AI revolution. And I hope that for myself and the audience today, we can all get a little bit more clarity of like where this is all going. So thank you again for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to see you, Bennett.
And I think for today, what we're going to go to set the agenda, right? We're going to go through high level, Perlon, what is Perlon, how you got to where you are today. We'll dive into a quick hot seat, few questions, quick responses, and then we'll go into some longer forum questions. So if you wouldn't mind just starting us off, I'd love to sort of just set a baseline for the audience of what is Perlon and what you got going on today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Perlon is a platform that enables agentic workflows to run for sales and marketing teams. Outbound workflows is the kind of key focus of what we do. And it was really kind of born out of me running outbound sales teams and seeing what worked, what didn't work, and also from a lot of prospects coming our way. So I suppose for a bit of context, we had a consulting company prior that did AI custom development work. And one of the things that was just being asked of us again and again was, how do we use AI to generate more new business? And it's a problem that I think a lot of companies face is, efficiently scaling outbound. And it's kind of where we decided to really kind of focus our attentions on building out a platform that enables these agents to operate in some of the kind of more manual, boring, repetitive tasks that salespeople have historically had to do themselves. So that's kind of, I guess how it all kind of came about.
And what sets Perlon apart from other platforms in the space that are trying to do this?
Yeah, so there's usually one of three things that is what enables or I suppose makes people decide to pick us in the first place of the tools in the market. The first is that we use custom models and we allow real deep personalization into what can actually develop as your agent in your model. So that's everything from deep research capabilities to custom language to really training it to sound like your best salesperson and not like an AI. I think that's been a problem with a lot of the kind of AI slop that you see landing in your inbox is that these things just don't sound human. So that's, I suppose, one of the big things that a lot of our customers see as being very different about what we do. The second, I think, has really been that everything is under one roof for running outbound. So that's everything from contact data to mailbox infrastructure to LinkedIn automation to phone to WhatsApp to everything that you really need to run the outbound function. You don't need any other plugins to make this work. And I think the third thing that's really sort of interestingly come up for us as a point of differentiation has been the fact that I suppose Perlon customers are supported by human experts. We over-index on how much time we spend with our customers. And that's our human team really helping advise, tweak campaigns, optimize, and make that transition from historic kind of SaaS workflows that they were using for outbound, like the outreaches, the sales lofts of this world, and into this kind of agentic way of working. And that transition is not necessarily always straightforward for businesses, and it really requires support. And this is where our experts who've now run, thousands of campaigns, we're doing millions of emails and messages. It's where the expert really kind of comes to the fore, is being able to advise and support on that transition. So yeah, I'd say those are the kind of three things that hit home with most of the customers.
Yeah, and I see you waging war against the incumbents on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm here for it as a RevOps
I
leader.
love it, Bennett.
Yeah, no, I'm here for it. I think that in RevOps, I'm always trying to have people sort of, push everyone forward. And if this sort of push pressure on the incumbents, if this allows for new people to come into the space and make it easier for us to do our jobs, great. It also means I have to learn a ton of new tools, which does kind of stink a little bit. But you have to just be constantly learning, I think, in this day and age.
For sure.
Why don't we jump into putting you on the hot seat? We're going to do a few rapid fire questions.
Go for it.
All right. Get ready.
Absolutely.
And go. How many cold calls do you want your BDR team, each individual, making in a single day at this point?
Minimum 100. We've got Anne-Marie on our team making 100 calls this afternoon to the US. That's what we want. A lot of time on the phones these days is what you need.
Okay, so cold calling is definitely not dead, is what I'm hearing.
Definitely not.
It's 5 years from now. What is a BDR doing with the majority of their time?
Cold calling. Well, yeah, cold calling, spending time in meetings, spending time at physical events, really doing the stuff that the human can only do. And I think that's where they sit. Building lists, doing all this sort of historic manual stuff should not be part of their workflows. They should have agents doing all that they communicate with.
Okay. So email, even LinkedIn, is going to be fully automated, super personalized.
Not everything. Obviously, I think there are going to be exceptions. Even for us, right? We've got like our tier one accounts who we don't even put through our own automation because that is human only stuff. So I think you can always have that segment of accounts that, you only ever touch with a human. But there's going to be the long tail, which you really deal with through your agent or through automation going forward. Yeah.
Totally. I work with an enterprise company, and I feel like part of my job, even though I'm an AI, pushing AI, is also to push back, right? When do we need to slow down, be more personalized, treat every account like a piece of gold? Favorite sales tool outside of Perlon, of course?
None of them. They all suck. Okay,
so they're all gone. Perlon can replace them all, basically.
We don't use any. I'm just trying to think if we use any. We don't use any tool. We API into a few tools for data and things like that, but we don't actually use many tools now other than our own.
And I saw you just got rid of HubSpot too.
We literally just got rid of HubSpot this week. CRM, yeah. We're just looking at what to replace them with. So we're thinking Attio is probably going to be the one we test out. But yeah, definitely we're not tied to any technology at Perlon AI. We'll rip it out and replace it real quick. So let's see.
As someone who invested a lot of time into learning Salesforce, part of me is hurt, but I also understand that's the future. And so I'm excited to see where that goes to as well.
Yeah.
What's the most overhyped AI tool right now in the go-to-market tech stack?
Using Claude Code to create your whole GTM infrastructure. You see all these LinkedIn influencers saying, comment here if you want to see how I generated 3,000 leads in a day with Claude Code. It's just like, yeah, good luck with that. Like, doesn't work. Sorry. If anyone can actually show me how they've had success with that, yeah, drop me a note and I'll buy you dinner, because it's just nonsense. Like, the whole thing that you need in order to run effective GTM is a very complex stack. Yeah. It is really structured. It needs constant maintenance. You really need to know what you're doing, and you just can't do it from a couple of prompts through Claude Code. So I think that is, I don't know, it's overrated, but we get on a lot of calls now where, the pushback is, oh yeah, but can't we just build this in Claude Code? It's like, yeah, go and try, please, and see how you get on, and then call me in 6 months when you've got no pipeline and you've got a broken system that's wasted, thousands and thousands of dollars. That is the most overhyped, I think.
Yeah, I think it's it's the build versus buy, and I think there's certain things that are so important to the revenue of your company. Like don't play around with that. I think that outbound is one of those things potentially where you just want to invest in the best possible solution, and
For sure.
don't try to cut corners.
Exactly. Particularly if, you've got a tech product, your engineers or anyone that's in a team that's able to build something like this, they need to be focusing on your core product. Your core product is your value. This isn't going to be accretive to the value of your company if you've got something like Frankenstein AI GTM stack that's sort of sitting there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, always buy, in my opinion, for this.
And I get it's stressful on LinkedIn now, all the Claude code stuff, and then when you really dive into it, it's not as deep yet as everyone makes it seem. That everyone wants to seem like they're automating everything, but
Yeah.
it's not always what it seems. Email pet peeves. What do you hate to see in an outbound email?
Oof. Yeah, anything bold, any stupid questions in the subject line, anything that gives it an indication that it's automated, right? If you're even like, I hate plain text signatures. I hate fully plain text signatures. No one in the real world has a fully plain text signature that doesn't have an image and an address and all this kind of stuff in it. If I see one of those now, I know it's automated. I think just these little signals that people are giving that they're just, still using the same old ways of working. Reply yes, like, the little
Oh
things
yeah,
that try and stop people from doing unsubscribes, like it's the things that anything like that that kind of just talks to you being in an automation are my kind of pet peeves. So yeah, there's a lot. I very rarely receive a good outbound prospecting email myself these days. If I do receive a good one, I usually post it on LinkedIn, but I actually received a good one today. Because yeah, most of these things are just, there's so many giveaways.
yeah. For me, it's the bold. If I see an email that's super long, it's bold everywhere. There's hyperlinks. Oh my goodness.
Bold is disgusting. I
Bold.
agree.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen an emoji in an email recently. God, no.
Yeah.
Favorite subject line or general rules of thumb with the subject line?
Yeah, I think with subject lines, you've got to try and keep them short, sharp, to the point, and not salesy. The obvious ones, again, are always the obvious ones where it's, first name, why don't you take a look at this? Or quick question mark, like all these kind of things that are just so hackneyed now as like styles. So I think when it comes to subject lines, you do want to keep some sort of dynamic variables within the subject lines so that you don't get flagged as sending the same thing, again and again and again. So that
Yeah.
is important to kind of change it up. With our platform, you can either have the AI generate a subject line for you based on best principles that we've written into it from running historic campaigns, or you can use kind of dynamic variables if you want to keep it sort of standardized in terms of what's being said. But I think key rule of thumb is, keep it to under 5 words. Try and keep a variable in there of some kind so that you don't get flagged as spam. And yeah, again, just don't make it look too salesy with a stupid question or, silly spam word or whatever it is that a lot of things can include these days.
Yeah. My go-to has always been your work with and then listing out their last 3 companies. And everyone always is going to click in that, right? You have no idea what it is it's about, but you're going to get people to at least click into that email.
Yeah, decent. I like that one, Bennett. Might try that one myself.
Thank you. What is a good reply rate at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when you and I worked together back in the day, we used to run campaigns that would get, 60% open rates, 7% reply rates as standard through sequences on HubSpot. And we'd be able to send 500-600 emails from a single mailbox in a single day. It was brilliant. Those were like the glory days of outbound reply rates. Nowadays, if you're getting anywhere near that with a standard campaign, you'd be very, very lucky.
Yeah.
I think good reply, like again, it's one of those sort of numbers that's kind of impossible to really sort of tell what the average is globally for cold email outbound, just given the sheer volume that are sent and the fact that there's no real kind of authoritative metrics. But I think that overall reply rates to cold outbound are probably sitting certainly sub 0.3%, maybe sort of even sub 0.2% realistically, if you think about everything that might be landing in spam. I think personally, even when we started, right, when we started Perlon, we 3.5% was our average across all campaigns. That's dropped. Our average is now around sort of 1.5%. It's become a lot harder, this space. But obviously, 1.5% is still better than 0.2 or 0.3% of what a lot of these companies and people are getting. But there's no denying, and there's no point in sort of hiding behind the fact that this has become harder. So reply rates, as a result, have dropped, and people have got to understand that as an expectation. But outbound across the board has become harder. Cold calling's become harder. If you've got an Apple phone, you know what you can do now, where you can just screen people. LinkedIn's become harder. You can only add a certain number of people a day on LinkedIn. You can't really, often it's hard to automate a lot of LinkedIn stuff. WhatsApp, you get flagged for spamming if you're sending, like, the whole world has become really tricky for doing outbound. And it's just part of the game, unfortunately, that those numbers have dipped.
Yeah, and I think it's tough, especially with emails. You don't want your team spending too much time doing that, given those reply rates, which is why I think a tool like Perlon is a must have at this point, right? Where you can say, okay,
Sure.
we need to increase the quality of our content while increasing the volume and giving our team the time back to our team at the same time. So, I think that's why a tool like Perlon right now is almost a necessity moving forward. Someone comes to you, they have unlimited budget. They're starting their tech stack from scratch. They're ripping and replacing everything. What are the tools that you're suggesting that they go with and build their team with?
Yeah, from a sales perspective, obviously, I'm going to talk up my own product here, but
Yeah.
I would look at something that is all in one, and something that is agent first in terms of the way that you use it and the way that it is actually able to operate. So, whether that's a Perlon, whether that's a sort of a clay-based system, whether it's something that is, I suppose, a little more sort of cheap and cheerful in the way that you kind of configure it. That's kind of what I would be kind of looking for on the outbound side. In terms of the CRM, again, like, we're that company now that's going from an incumbent HubSpot to looking for something else, because we're not really that convinced that there's enough value in something like a HubSpot going forward. So yeah, I'll have to tell you how it goes with Attio. We are going to run that as a little test for a few months and see how we get on with it. But this is the thing, right? It's quite, 5-6 years ago, back in the day, like, it was kind of inconceivable to be able to, like, switch between CRMs. It would be such a headache. Now it's so easy to pull the data from one to into another. Like, that whole, like, experimental sort of ability is really here now. So yeah, I would say, obviously, even if you make a mistake with that first choice of tool, CRM, outbound system, whatever, like, you can move quick these days and test things that are on the market. And I think that's important. You don't want to be married to any tools these days. You kind of do want to be testing, as we're going through this, like, massive change. So, yeah, it's not a very good answer to the question now, I'm afraid, but
No,
I guess
I
it's,
think it
yeah.
is. You still need some sort of way of storing customer data, and then from there, when it comes to the outbound side of things, if there's a tool that can do it all in one, of course, that makes a lot of sense too. Last question: what is a Perlon? How'd you get the name?
That is a good question. There, it was actually, so Brent, my co-founder, and I were kind of struggling to come up with a name for the business. We didn't have anything that really made sense. We were thinking of, like, something to do with neurons or something like that. And I was just on the phone to a friend of mine. I was like, I'm really struggling to think of a name for this AI company we're starting. And he just said to me, well, why don't you call it Perlon? And I was like, that sounds good. Yeah, we'll take that. Doesn't mean anything as far as I'm aware, but it sounds like it could mean something. And I think that's the key thing that we thought, it's quite easy to remember. It rolls off the tongue. It's easy to spell. It's kind of like, yeah, all right, that kind of made sense to us. So I don't have a good answer for you there, other than it literally means nothing.
Well, it actually does mean something. Apparently, a Perlon is a
Really?
strong braided synthetic nylon fiber. So I guess you could say, it ties things together. It holds things strong. Now, who knows if that's actually a thing, but
You know what? That is much better answer. You have answered that question in the way that I will now be answering that question to all interviews when it's asked. That is brilliant. So it's like, okay, so yeah, a Perlon. So it's like a kind of, like a kind of connective tissue synthetic. Okay, you're right. I get it. I like it. I
yeah,
like
it
it.
actually it kind
Makes
of
sense.
fits. Kind of fits.
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, that's the end of our rapid fire questions. So you're out of the hot seat now, and now I just kind of want to dive into overall, like, what you're seeing. I think, again, going back to you're building a go-to-market motion with a go-to-market tool, having that experience building out teams in the past when these tools didn't exist. So really just trying to dive into what's changing, where you see the future going. I'm interested in sort of what it looks like to build the team out right now, right? I think that traditionally it was a 2-to-1 SBDR AE relationship, or some teams would go, fully all AEs doing full sales cycles. I'm interested to
Yeah.
see like how you're thinking about that as you scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think certainly within our business, we are big proponents of having the full cycle salesperson supported by the best technology. So we have, there's two people in our sales team at the moment. We're a multi-million ARR revenue business with two salespeople, and I think this is one of the luxuries, and this is one of the amazing things about um, AI is that you can now sort of build these leaner teams that can still hit good numbers with both their sort of individual quotas and also sort of working towards kind of team company sort of ARR goals and things like that. So yeah, the way I see it certainly within our company is that we will always have full cycle salespeople rather than a BDR sort of AE split, which was the sort of, the old school way of doing things, the way that, you and I did things when we were working together.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's because we can obviously dog food our platform at scale. So they've got that support. Again, we centrally manage campaigns. We work on campaign architecture together, messaging structure, all of that kind of stuff. And then we can just run these things at big scale for cheap because it's our platform essentially. So even for us, right, even getting to where we are now, we've spent very little money on marketing, right? We're talking in total. I've spent under $5,000 on marketing. We've obviously used our tool at scale, but it's been very fortunate that we can do that, and that we can scale outbound to support a sales team, and we can continue to do so. It's not something that I think we want to do forever. We are going to start spending on marketing probably. Actually, this quarter is when we sort of start to think about that. But most companies a lot of companies that I've spoken to will do it in the opposite direction. They start by spending on a hell of a lot on marketing, and then they start thinking about outbound. But yeah, for us, that full cycle role is the way forward. That's the future, given
Okay.
what we have as a tool.
My one concern about that, what I've seen historically, right, is that AEs hate cold calling. And so you mentioned the idea of like 100 cold calls per day. Is that expectation possible now through the use of power dialers, through streamlining the rest of the activity? Do you expect right now with your two AEs, are you expecting them to make 100 dials themselves every single day?
No, this was actually, this is a bit of an exaggeration. This is just today, because we have a very particular market segment that we want to go after, and we don't have enough pipeline in that particular market segment. So it's a Friday afternoon, and this is a good time to get on the phones. This is a US market segment that we're going for as well. So yeah, this is the perfect time between now and the end of the day for that particular AE to really hit those phones so that we can, generate a little bit of interest in that segment. Generally speaking, I'm not too strict on cold calling, and I'm not too strict on pushing the team to do that. They've got their pipeline numbers to hit. They've got their total number of deals to hit in a given month. And to be completely honest, I'm quite hands off with how they actually achieve that and how they get there. If they want to use cold calling, we've got a dialer built into our platform, which we encourage them to use and to encourage them to act on signals that our platform's showing about certain prospects that are in campaigns. But yeah, broadly speaking, I'm not generally too strict on it, to be honest.
Okay. As long as they're hitting their numbers, however you do
That's
it.
it. I don't really care. Beyond that, if they hit their numbers, that's all that matters at the end of the day, really.
And then, sorry, when it comes to who has their hands in your platform, right? I think this is where, from the RevOps side of things, we're trying to figure it out, right? Like the go-to-market engineering role, historically, that's really a subset of revenue operations in a way, right? It's being broken out, where we have somebody who's really focused on what I see the role as being like data hygiene, using Clay, whatever other data providers you use, and then structuring automation that allows for email sequences to fire off hands-free of sort of the BDR is really and really aligning that to marketing's outbound efforts as well. With your platform, do you envision it being somewhere, each company has a handful of go-to-market engineers who are engineering all this? Do you see it more as let's weaponize the account executives that we have so that when they do have a webinar coming up or a trade show coming up, they can go into Perlon, they can set up a sequence of 50% AI emails, a couple of manual touch points, and they set that sequence up themselves. They maybe can review those AI emails before they get fired off. Like, where do you see this shifting in terms of who has control of these outbound
Yeah.
campaigns?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When we get a customer who has one or two either sort of sales ops or operational GTM engineering specialists that are handed Perlon, and it's like, right, this is yours. You got to make this succeed. That is often where we see the best success, when we've got ownership from someone who is really interested in what is, what we have is not a technical product, but it's, semi-technical in putting it all together. And there's an element of like interest that's really needed there. GTM engineers, sales ops people often like this stuff, right? This is their bread and butter, and working with them to build out these campaigns and campaigns that need to be iterated on, that need to sort of be tweaked, be tested. That's ideal for us. A lot of salespeople don't care, right? They don't want anything other than the output, and they're often not prepared to put in the work to achieve it. And this is what's been infuriating for us with certain customer types, is that their sales teams just have no engagement with it, and then they just don't use it. And they come and say, oh, look, we haven't generated any leads. It's like, well, it's because you haven't actually started using the platform yet. And that's where this sort of big disconnect is. It's between those people who are interested in this kind of technology and those who aren't. So for us, we prefer dealing with, someone who's got ownership of a platform that's centralized in the way they then manage it. But I think the future with any of these systems is that we move towards natural language interfacing with all of these technologies and with these integrated systems, such that you won't need to have a huge amount of technical expertise to get an agent to do what you want. You're just going to have to talk to it, and you're going to have to talk to it and tell it what you want. And you have to give it enough context, but that is all going to be done through natural language. It's not even going to be done through clicking or pushing buttons or building APIs in or doing any kind of things that are vaguely complex. So that complexity of getting something started should be removed. And it would be interesting to see how salespeople, or if salespeople, are able to take up these kind of tools with more effectiveness when it is entirely natural language, the way they interact with them. Who knows? Having worked with 150 plus sales teams in the last couple of years, I know what these teams are like now. And the majority of them, they don't have the inclination to do any of this stuff at all. And it's kind of shocking how little often these people will put into it. But that engagement thing is key. And this is why we like working with like centralized departments often.
And then who are you seeing become that centralized person? I think that on one hand, right now at least, because there's still some technical aspects of the go-to-market engineering role, you need to know oftentimes like no-code automation tools like N8N. You need to know Clay a little bit, or a lot of these roles. You need to be able to navigate a tool like Perlon. And then at the other side of things, the end output is still email copy, right? It's still like sales. And so I think that there's, for me, trying to figure out who becomes that sales engineer. Is it salespeople who become technical? Is it technical people in the RevOps role that have sales acumen? Who are you seeing sort of in general taking that up? If you had to hire somebody, what skill set are you looking for in somebody who is orchestrating all of this?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and we've seen a combination of all sorts. Operations, sales ops, GTM, engineers, mixed with marketing teams because it's a copy related thing, mixed with sales teams because it's obviously a sales pipeline generation tool. And in an ideal world, you kind of have one or two people from the sales team who are switching over to managing the technical component, right? So that's where you've got the historic sales experience. You know what sells, you know your value prop, you know the market, and you've done it in the sales role. And maybe you're now switching into a slightly more sort of operational role as these tools have come to the fore, right? And as AI has become a thing, it's like you'll have someone in the team who has a slight sort of technical bent to the way they think or likes this technology and thinks, actually, you know what, I want to be doing this. And obviously this kind of role is developing within businesses, and it's, performing that kind of GTM engineer type sort of headline. So if you've got someone from sales who sort of flows into that, that's kind of your ideal. But then again, similarly, if you've got someone from marketing who wants to sort of take ownership of that as well. However, marketing and sales will often have very different objectives on what I suppose different opinions on what like outbound and what good looks like. So again, you encounter some of the same um, battles that you always encountered within an organization when you're helping companies adopt this kind of technology. But the key thing is like you just got to have enthusiasm. A small 1 or 2 person team who are enthusiastic and who have it on their heads, right? This is your responsibility. You've got to make Perlon work rather than here's a tool, see if you can make it work. And then, come and complain to us if it doesn't, and then we can churn and go on to another one. It's like someone has to have ownership of this and it needs to be a little baby. And because obviously we'll work very closely with them when we have that. But finding that in a team it's harder than probably I've made sound.
And I think this role is the new thing right now. Like it was, I think, demand generation, and it was like sales ops was the thing, and then it's RevOps, and now it's go-to-market engineer. And I think that all teams would be wise to try to pull this role into their team, whether you're marketing, sales, or revenue operations. So it's going to be interesting to see who sort of wins that battle and where it makes sense to absorb this, whether it's RevOps with all the data or marketing with all of like the pitch knowledge and the product positioning, or is it sales because of their sales acumen? And, I think that sometimes salespeople know how to write a better email than a marketing person does. It's going to be really interesting to see where this all flushes out. I know that we're coming up on time. So one last question. I was just on Outreach's website today, and their sort of tagline now is, you didn't hire enough sellers, and now you don't have to. I'm curious to see like what you think about that. How does somebody who is, building out an AI native sales platform balance this idea of sales reps and automation, and what is your first sort of instinct on that sales pitch that they have?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I listened to a podcast with Jason Lemkin yesterday, and he specifically said, you don't see anybody shouting about how excited they are to use Outreach anymore. He called it a tragedy app, right? So there's some quite like harsh words that are being bandied around about some of these like historic players who have basically missed AI in their products, and they've had to now bolt on like, oh yeah, we're AI first, or like we're agents. It's like you're not, and this way, you're losing your customers at a rate of knots. So this whole like narrative that we're AI workers, we're going to replace teams, we're going to completely get rid of them, which is one that Artisan and a few of these others had when they sort of started. Like they're not very popular narratives, but B, they're also not true. Like you can't have these fully AI end-to-end sales teams that are doing anything vaguely enterprise in terms of the deals they're closing or things like that. So like we've never sold ourselves as like, we're coming in to replace sales teams, or, you can reduce your headcount by X and we'll give you Y. That's not how this works. Like we're in the process of supporting sales teams. We're in the process of reducing manual workloads. Look, over time, if that means that, you can get a certain degree of results and maybe the sales team reduces by a little bit of headcount, then maybe that's a second order effect or whatever. But like, that's not the way that you go in and sell. And I think there's certainly a lot of pushback to that, right? To that kind of human replacement narrative. And as I say, I think for us, it's really been about supporting sales teams through this transition to agentic workflows, to enabling companies to do more, and it often results in more hiring. We get more users, and companies adding more team members and thinking, oh, we're going to expand to this country, or we're going to do this instead, or the campaigns that we ran to Australia and New Zealand have yielded X. Therefore, we're actually putting a person on the ground there. It's like that's the sort of narrative that we kind of like to talk to, rather than we're actually coming in to take your lunch and to get rid of your whole team.
I love that. I think, hey, if we're making individual sellers better, then theoretically, you can go both ways. You could hire more and be more effective with them. So yeah, just really excited for what the future brings and what platforms like you guys and Perlon can bring. Any last second advice for sales leaders before we jump off and sort of how to navigate the future?
I think I'd just really encourage all sales leaders to be incredibly experimental with everything at the moment. Find some budget, allocate it, test a bunch of tools, like really see what's possible. And if you are a sales leader and you're deploying any of this technology, you should stay really close to it. What we see so often at Perlon is CROs, VPs of sales being the ones who buy the tech and then they don't care. They're out. They don't have anything to do with it. They're not involved in the training. They're not involved in understanding how it works. They're not looking at the reporting, and they just think, okay, cool, like leave this to the team. I don't think that's the way forward, and I don't think that's the way to go. The most successful customers we've worked with are where the senior sales leader really is bought into it and is learning and is understanding and is the one who's probably most familiar with the tool and the outputs and the reporting and the way that it kind of works. So I would encourage any sales leaders to really dive headfirst into this. Don't just take that view that like, oh, I'm the leader, I'm above all this kind of stuff. Like you're not. This is a totally new way of working. This is something that you really ought to start learning now. So like dig in, and it will be a really long-term beneficial exercise, I think.
Yeah, none of us are masters of this yet. 'Cause it's so early on. Sinjin, thank you so much for joining. For those watching, give Sinjin a follow on Instagram. I mean, sorry, LinkedIn. If nothing else, you'll see how to run a masterful LinkedIn sort of guerrilla marketing campaign. I love sort of seeing what you post. So thanks again for
Thanks,
joining me.
Bennett. Yeah, appreciate it. Great to see you.
All right, take care.